Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Gordo Gams. Welcome back to another full card breakdown. This time for UFCLondon. Yes, we are back on the other side of the pond to break down a 15-fight card. One that is actually pretty interesting, filled with a lot of young talent from over there, from Europe, and one that I'm actually looking forward to. A nice early start time for us over here in North America, and one I'm excited to dive into both the betting and a DraftKings perspective. Like I said, we do have 15 fights, so I want to dive into it, so I want to cover them all. For those that are new here, as always, we're going through this entire card from a DraftKings and betting perspective. This will be timestamped down below. At the end of the video, we will also make sure to go over there, cover all my DraftKings plays, betting targets. I think I do a best bet now because that's what the comments recommended, and also Reignmakers. If you guys have more questions, concerns, or even improvements for the show, leave them in the comment section down below. Quickly, last week we asked for a bounce back week. Guess what? We got one, almost a sweep. The only one we missed was a 0.22 unit play on Muniz by KO. Excuse me. Unfortunate loss there. She was an underdog. I was looking towards targeting and pivots as well, but man, for those that don't know, I got my undergrad in human kinetics, and I'm taking my doctorate of chiropractic right now, and a dislocation like that at the elbow that's a gnarly, a pretty nasty dislocation there. So no complaints about that. We got that bounce back week. We did pretty well on the betting front, and I'm looking to improve on that here. As always, DMs and comment sections down below are always open. Feel free to leave any comments you may have. I wish everyone the best of luck. Let's dive into it. First fight of the night, we have the 14-3 Jafel Filho versus the 16-5 Danielle Barez. We got ourselves an interesting flyweight clash between two fighters looking for their first win of the UFC banner. One where I went into tape thinking Filo's a guy that they're looking to promote here, looking to get a win here, and one that I left on the Barez side. Let's get that out of the way here. Filo's a guy who went in against McCann, almost submitted him, fought really, really well. Did lose that fight, but man, put up a hell of a fight. He's a very, very solid submission artist. Whereas Barez is a guy who lost in a contender series to Carlos Hernandez, but made a very good account for himself. Someone who I think is actually a decent prospect. Now, he is older, 34 years old coming in, making your debut at flyweight is nothing you really want to see, but truth be told, I do think he's a very well-rounded skill set. I think really here what we're getting is someone who impressed in their debut. Filo's a guy who did nothing but good things, and I think he's being overvalued for that. And I think in return, we have ourselves an underdog to start of the night that I do think is very, very live. Like I said, Barez is very well-rounded. He has a very good ground game. He has some good offensive skill set, but where he's going to excel in this matchup is that striking. I do think he's the more competent striker, one who's very, very powerful, and one who mixes it up very, very well. He's got 13 of his 16 wins by finish, something that is really you really like to see at flyweight, and he does so by carrying power late, by having the ability to stuff takedowns if he wants to, but also having the ability to mix it up from all angles. Now, I still think Filho is the superior grappler. He is someone who I think excels there, and that's his bread and butter, but I do think that the discrepancy in the striking is larger than it is the grappling, and Barez is able to hold his own style at go there. Now, of course, there's a world where Filho takes him down, controls him, maybe even submits Barez, but I do think that is a much smaller percentage than minus 130 entails for Filho. I think instead, Barez wins this fight more than 50, more than 60% of the time, around that 60, 65% of the time mark, making him the undeserving underdog. I'm taking a shot at the underdog early on. I think he has more paths to get it done. He's able to stuff the takedowns and land the more damaging shot in the feet. And we've seen recently that damage has been winning fights. So this is a decently close fight, one where Filho is going to have his opportunities on the mat. I think overall Barez has the more rounded skill set, has the better striking, and has the ability to put Filo's lights out in a very, very entertaining first strap of the night. DraftKings, both guys are live because Filho, his path to victory is going to include takedowns and a submission. And whereas I'm talking about how good at Barez is stuffing the takedowns, the win condition is going to score well for GVP and Filho. Instead, though, if you're looking for underdog, Barez is one I'm going to go to a lot this week. I think at 7.9K, you have finish upside, you have volume, and I think that under the unforeseen circumstance where Filho is able to get him down, Barez is smart enough to know he's going to have to make up that difference on the feet and has the explosiveness, the power, and the volume to really go out there and score well on DraftKings. This is a high priority target for me that I don't often say for flyweight, but this is a fight I'm looking to target. I'm leaning towards Barez. I do think it gets it done. However, the win condition for Filho scores very well. Next up, the 8-3-1 Bruno Brasil versus the 5-0 Shauna Bannon. We have ourselves an Irish prospect making her debut in Bannon there versus my arch nemesis, Bruno Brasil. One of the worst bets of the year I made has been a Bruno Brasil against Nisa Gomes at a favorite price tag. I thought she had a superior skill set here, similar to what she has here, but what she showed was she is a better hammer than she is a nail. She is someone who doesn't face adversity that well, someone who has been able to beat up against this lower level of competition. And when she finally made that jump, although Denise Gomes I still don't think is that good of a prospect, is going to be aggressor, is tougher than Brasil, and showed more willingness to win the fight, and Brasil crumbled. And that's where I think it's going to play into this breakdown here, because I think that Shauna Bannon has a lot of improvement to do. She is still very green, struggles in the strike, struggles in the physicality, and has a lot of improvement to do against much better level of competition because her regional competition isn't that good. What I do think we have here is someone Bruno Brasil who, although maybe better technically, is maybe not built to be a fighter. And Maybe that's harsh. I actually take that back. She is definitely a fighter. She could kick my ass any day. But truth be told, it's hard for me to back her because at this point here, when you're going out there and you're not able to face adversity, when you're facing these Kansas regional scene, when you're finally taking that step up and you're struggling against someone like Bannon who's going to do one thing and that is going to continue to push forward and grapple and be in your face at all times, it's hard for me to trust Brasil. Skill for skill, Brazil's a more talented fighter, more technical in the feet, much better striker, but she can be taken down. She can be controlled. She was controlled by Go and controlled in the Dana Contender Series. And Bannon's going to do one thing, that's push forward and look to use her grappling. Although she may not get in her first or second try, she's going to keep going. She's very offensive minded, and although she's a lot of improvement to do, against someone who can break under pressure here, I might have to pick her to win. In addition to the fact that this is in Europe and you are looking towards showcasing these new prospects with some decent amount of followers on Twitter and Instagram, I do think Bannon has an opportunity to get it done, and she's going to look to exploit the defense weaknesses in Bruna Brasil. With that being said, though, 7.6K, Bannon, another live underdog, because if she's going to win this fight, it's going to be breaking Bruna Brasil and doing so with a lot of takedowns, which can score very well on DraftKings. Although I'm talking about this underdog being live, by no means am I going out there and saying that convincingly. I think that this is a fight that is very low level. I don't want too much of a financial investment in. But on DraftKings, Bannon's ceiling is super high because she's a grappler first, which scores well on DraftKings. She's facing someone who can be taken down, and she's facing someone who can break. All of those put together leads to a decently high ceiling for Bannon at 7.6. So on a 15-fight slate, there are a lot of opportunities. However, Bannon is someone I'm looking to target as an underdog, and she is someone I'm picking to win this fight. And that's two underdogs to start the card. Let's make it three right away. Yanel Ashmouz 7-0 against the 10-1 Chris Duncan. Yanel Ashmouz came in as a huge underdog for me against Sam Patterson. One of my favorite calls of the year. It made me some decent cash there, and he opened up at around a pick'em here with Chris Duncan, and now the money's going to come in on Chris Duncan. And me and Chris Duncan are the best of friends. Let's put it that way. I bet against him on Dana Contender Series. He pulled off a glorious, historic comeback. I bet on him with Omar Morales. He gets a controversial decision win against Omar Morales. I've lost money, Chris Duncan. I'm not happy with it, and I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to do it tentatively. Chris Duncan has holes in his game. He is very poor defensively. He can be hit. Doesn't have the best durability, but what he does have is good cardio and good offensive wrestling. The question for me then is, has he shored up his striking, and is he going to be more physical than Yanel here to get him down to the ground? And I don't necessarily think he's able to do that. Although there is a world where Chris Duncan's able to stifle the offensive Ashmouz and control him for 15 minutes, every time they're at range, Yanel has power to put out Chris Duncan's light, and for that reason, I'm going to have to side with the guy with more paths to victory. Yes, Duncan's a very popular fighter this week, and I get it. He is someone who has a path to control somebody versus someone Yanel who probably can be controlled. But I don't think him being able to control Ashmouz is more than 50-60% implied. I think instead Ashmouz has more paths of victory. I think he has the ability to land that knockout shot, is the better grappler, and has the ability to land some takedowns of his own. And we've seen Chris Duncan be able to be hit and outworked and lose fights. And this is a spot here where I think he does lose again. Ashmouz trained with a very good camp, which is going to make sure his cardio is in the right place. He's a guy with a ton of power. He's going to be able to land on a guy, Chris Duncan, who doesn't defend strikes that well. And is someone who I see being another very live underdog. So to start the card, I've taken the 7.6 fighter, the 7.8, and the 7.9. I think that all three of those underdogs are very, very live. I think that, yes, there's a world where Chris Duncan's able to control in 15 minutes. I don't think that doesn't score that well, and I don't think it's very live to happen. Instead, I favor Yanel here. He is someone who I messed up line movement and have already bet. Maybe I'll add here. I don't know. I don't want to lose more money in Chris Duncan because truth is, this is a very close fight, and although I'm picking Yanel, it's not like I'm saying he should be minus 200 here. I'm saying he should be the slight favorite. He has a path to victory. I do think he gets it done by finish. A very fun fight, but I am picking the underdog here. Let's keep it moving though. 13-3, Ketlin Vieira, 16-6, Panny Kianzad. Another polarizing matchup. One where both fighters have their paths to victory. Shorter breakdown for me because I don't think this scores that well on DraftKings, but we have someone who is going to be the more active striker versus someone who's going to be the more powerful fighter. And I specify fighter and not striker because I think Vieira not only has the power on the feet to land the better visuals, but also has the physicality to win the clinch exchanges and win the grappling. Yes, Panny Kianzad, a ton of volume, is going to look out there and look to win over the judges with that style, but Ketlin Vieira's going to have the X factor, and that's going to be able to push her against the cage, implement takedowns, and land more damaging shots. And although she does only land takedown, a 1.3 takedown 15-minute clip, she has that in her back pocket, and she has that to secure rounds. Although Panny's going to be able to go out there and land more shots, Vieira's going to have more damage. She's going to have that takedown upside, and I do think she has the visuals to get this done. But do I want to wager any money in this fight? No, this is a complete pass for me, and one that I see going to the judges' scorecard a lot of the time and not scoring too well. I'm going to pick Vieira because he has more paths to victory, but not one I want too much of a financial investment in. Not the best fight here, but one where I do see Vieira getting her hand raised most of the time here. And although Kianzad is live to do it with volume, I don't think it's all too often. I don't mind those shorter breakdowns. Let's go to another one that I try to keep it short, but 18-10 Brian Barberena, 25-8 Muradov. This is a fun fight. I love Barberena, but I don't know what he is at this stage of his career. I mean, I thought he lost to Matt Brown in Columbus. He got a favorable match against Lawler that I bet him in, but submission losses to Nelson Dos Santos really exposing that grappling early on. Close fight with Weeks, losing that fight to Witt's not a good look. Close fight with Ivy. He's at this point of his career where he is getting older. He's losing his physicality, and now he's going up a weight class too, which doesn't help. He can be taken down a lot. He can be hit a lot, and although he's a very tough guy who will walk forward with volume, that's what he's limited to. And what he's doing here is he's facing a killer in Muradov, who although was derailed hype train wise against Gerald Meerschaert and Kai Baralho, those were against two guys who were able to implement their ground game against him and stifle that offensive striking. Instead here, Muradov is not only going to be the far superior technical striker, but he's going to have the ability to mix it up into the ground his own right if he decides to go there, which I don't really think he needs to. Muradov is way better technically, way more powerful, and against a guy who gets hit as often as Brian Barberena, it doesn't seem to be too good of a recipe for success. So I think we finally have a world where Muradov's able to be comfortable in his striking, plant his feet without having to worry about the takedowns, and is going to be able to connect on Brian Barberena's chin at will, adding a third consecutive loss to his record there. And I think Muradov has multiple levels to his game. I also think he's a more physically imposing fighter at this weight class and has the potential to take down Barberena if he wants to, considering how poor Barberena's takedown defense has been. Either way, I do think he wins this fight at a very high clip. Yes, there's a world where Barberena uses that pressure and volume to tire down Muradov, who has been, broken down the stretch like Meerschaert did to him, but I don't think that happens at too high of a clip, and I do think that Muradov should be favored as expensive as he here. But at 9.5K, do I want to get to him? I'm leaning toward yes, because I've already mentioned 3 underdogs so far that I can get to. There's more to come, and at 9.5K, he does have finish upside. He does have a guy in front of him who can be taken down and hit at will, and a guy who just defensively irresponsible in front of him. So Muradov has a ton of offensive weapons to get it done. I do think he wins this fight at a high clip and is a very solid option at 9.5K. Barberena, Hail Mary pivot. I don't think he wins too often, but when he does, it's going to come to breaking his opponent down the stretch. Don't think it's too high of a clip, but GPP levered. And then a really tough one, 6-0 Mick Parkin versus the 10-3 Jamal Pogues. Parkin's a tough guy to get a read on. I mean, only 6-0, never has reached the third round, very low level of competition. He's a tough guy to back in this spot, and I completely get it. We don't know how good his cardio is. His level of competition is certainly poor. We don't know how he is when he faces adversity. All we know is he's a very good hammer and a questionable nail. 6-0, he hasn't had to face adversity. He'll probably get some here against Jamal Pogues. Jamal Pogues, blown up light heavyweight, has a wrestling background, but doesn't always use it. But we know he definitely has it in the back pocket. He did use it against Parisian landing 5 there, but there has been fights where he's been content to strike, and he is a decent striker at that. But the truth be told, he's a light heavyweight, and although he has shown decent cardio, he's nothing really to write home about. He doesn't land extensive combinations. He's got a good jab, some wrestling chops, that's really it. And he's undersized for this division, so there are people who I'm going to want to bet against Jamal Pogues here, and Mick Parkin's definitely that GPP type of guy I'm looking to do so with, but to what extent? Do I want to bet the money line of a guy, Michael Parkin, who I've seen not fight anybody, not make it past the third round, and not really face any adversity when it comes to being taken down? Or do I want to try to back the guy here in Pogues who I've seen be able to mix it up, who I've seen have a decent jab and cardio to go the full 15 minutes, and someone who I've actually seen at the UFC level? Now, yes, Parkin's undefeated in his hometown. He could get that judge's rub there, but truth be told, I don't think he has the cardio or the style to go up 15 minutes. It doesn't really matter. Instead, it's a really tough one to call. Minute winning wise, Jamal Pogue, finish equity, Mick Parkin, and for that reason, you got your clear DraftKings split right there. Pogues is the official pick on the pick side of things, whereas Parkin is the GPP play. 7.3K, if he wins this fight, it's probably going to be a knockout early on. We don't know really how he fares after that, and against a guy who's probably going to shoot takedowns on him against Pogues, I don't really think he has the cardio to withstand that and get a late finish. Instead, his path of victory limited to round 1, round 2, that's about it. Going to score very, very well if he wins at 7.3. I don't know how often that happens, so I'm not going to be overexposed to him, but definitely a guy I'm going to want some exposure to. Pogues on the flip side of things, 8.9. Yeah, takedown upside, I get it, but didn't show the most killer instinct. Only scored 81 against Parisian, and I don't think he's necessarily has more upside than the Alvarez's or the Muniz's or other guys in the higher end of this range. So although he is live, not the guy I'm going to the most here. Speaking of Alvarez, 19-3 Joel Alvarez versus the 16-6 Mark the Bone Crusher Diakiese. We have ourselves a fun fight here. We have Mark D1 Diakiese. Guy's been wrestling a ton recently. I mean, there's a 2-fight stretch where he landed 19 takedowns in 2 fights, but He's changing up his style, but he's adapting here, and he's facing a guy with a 0% takedown rate. Let's put it that way, Joel Alvarez. And we have a very simple matchup of who gets our style off. Because Mark Diakiese is the better minute winner. I don't know really what other way to put it. He has a ton of takedown upside against a guy who is willing to be taken down, 0% takedown defense. I think he has very competent striking to stifle the offensive pressure of Joel Alvarez. And aside from that Hail Mary submission that Joel Alvarez is known for, he should win this fight on the judges' scorecards. The problem is that Hail Mary submission. The problem is Joel Alvarez is so good at what he does, which is forcing his opponents to shoot and latching something up on the ground. He's very, very explosive off his back, very dynamic, great jiu-jitsu, and Mark Diakiese has been finished before. Submitted by Hooker, submitted by Alvarez with that guillotine, that I can kind of see Joel Alvarez landing here, which is why I understand Joel Alvarez is a very popular play this week. He is someone who is been bet down to this line. I get why he's the favorite, because he has more finish upside in this spot. But someone who is completely limited to landing that submission win and has not the best minute winning equity, who can be controlled, who is willing to be taken down, he's not someone who I necessarily want to back from a pick perspective. I think that this fight as a whole is one you really want to target, but Mark Diakiese 7.2K is a very, very viable underdog. He scored 118 against Borshev, 112 against Hadzovic, and now he's getting a guy in front of him who 0% takedown defense, a guy who's willing to be on his back. Diakiese is a very, very live underdog. Now, yes, there's a world where Alvarez latches up the neck early on, scores an 100-point victory, doesn't even have to stop a takedown to do that. I get it. That's why this fight is one you want to target for both sides, and that's why I'm going to have some Alvarez at 9K, because when he has won fights, he scored 107, 92, 97, 96. He's a finisher because he doesn't have the most decision equity. But overall, a very fun fight. I want this fight from both sides on DraftKings. I think they're both very live. When it comes to picking a side, I talked about how Diakiese is the better minute winner, but my gut's telling me Alvarez. I've seen Diakiese in his opportunities too many times, very, very dicey, but I think it's more towards a -110, -110. I think if you got the Alvarez finish only line, that's a line you can play. His win condition is that finish, whereas Diakiese is very content to grapple for 15 minutes. High-scoring DraftKings fight either way. I gotta keep it rolling. We're only halfway through here. Danny Roberts 18-7, Johnny Parsons 8-3. It's gonna be a quick one. Johnny Parsons making his debut here. Offensive-minded boxer. That's really what he's limited to. Is he wants to walk forward, land with power, and that's what he does best. I mean, 5 of 7 wins coming by knockout. He got an upset win over Solomon Renfro in Dana White Contender Series, and he's going to be in your face and he's going to throw with fighting intentions. And Danny Roberts is kind of the opposite. He's going to want to keep you at range and utilize his better skill set. And I think that truly, skill for skill, Danny Roberts is the far superior fighter. He has a bit of grappling in his back pocket with some wins coming by submission. He has way better technical striking and ability to mix it up with his legs and knees as well, and is very dynamic from the outside range, from kicking range. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, Gordo, if you're saying all this stuff, you must be on Danny Roberts here. No, I can't trust the guy. He's been finishing all of his losses but one. He's been knocked out 4 times in his career, and his durability seems to be that red flag here. And against a guy who's going to be as offensive-minded as Johnny Parsons, I can't get there, really. It's as simple as it is. Danny Roberts is the better skill-for-skill fighter, and I think that there is a world where he's able to stick on the outside, utilize all his limbs, and win a decision that way. But truth be told, every time Johnny Parsons throws, you're going to be clenched because Danny Roberts has no chin. He can't take that much of a punch, and, well, Parsons throws with fighting intentions. So, to me, it just seems to be a fight where Danny Roberts is going to be winning until he's clipped. Very, very close, but I'm going to lean towards the guy with more finish upside here in Johnny Parsons, and for that reason, he has all the upside. Parsons at 8.2, I'm going to have way more ownership of him than Roberts because, Parsons scores very well in a win, which is probably by finish, whereas Roberts is content to stay on the outside and utilize that striking from range. In Roberts wins, he's gone out there and scored 54. He did score 105 against Imadaev, but 68 against Zawada, 90 against Nash. Hot Chocolate is content to stay at range, and I think he's going to have to survive the onslaught of Parsons, one that you're going to be clenched every time that Parsons throws, like I mentioned. So Parsons more finish upside. He has more, I think, better optics walking forward. And yes, there's a world where Danny Roberts is able to use his range from the outside. I'm just not able to trust his durability at this point of his career. Give me Parsons. And then we get to one of my favorite fights of the night. 13-6 Davey Grant, 14-0 Daniel Marcos. I've been super high on Daniel Marcos. I bet on him in Contender Series, and I bet on him huge in his first UFC fight, one where he was an underdog against Oliveira, and he came out second round knockout. He's been good to me. But man, being an underdog to Simon Oliveira, being a favorite against Davey Grant, that seems to be the story here. And yes, I understand. Daniel Marcos has looked amazing. He's shown great takedown defense. He's shown great straight punches and dynamic striking, but against a level of competition. And that's really what is left to here is you have a guy in front of you in Davey Grant who is super, super durable, super top fought, great level of experience, who will stay in your face the whole 15 minutes, and somebody's going to pose problems. I think that Grant also has the more diverse grappling arsenal, and I don't think that Marcos should be this heavily favored without really proving it. It wasn't long ago where he was on this 2 4-year layoff without fighting anybody. I think there are still a lot of questions to be asked about Dan Marcos. And if Marcos is out here being a plus 150 underdog, I'd say sure, take the shot on the dog. But truth is, he's the favorite. And he's getting to be a larger favorite by the minute here, and I can't trust him here. I think that Davy Grant has better fight experience. He has power in his hand to really test Daniel Marcos. He has the durability, he has the pressure, and he has the grappling upside here, and I think he should be favored in this matchup. Yes, there's a world where Marcos is able to stuff the takedowns, use the straight punches to win a 15-minute decision. But let's also remember, this is in the UK, where Davy Grant's from. He could maybe get another split decision there. Davy Grant is really tough fighter to fight against, especially when you're going from Simon Oliveira to him. Huge step up, very tough opponent in front of him, and I'm going to have to take Davy Grant here. DraftKings wise, you don't necessarily need Davy Grant, but another underdog, 7.7. That now means I'm taking the 7.9, 7.8, 7.7, 7.6 underdogs, as well as mentioning the 8.2 and 7.3, 7.3. Oh my God, it's underdog central this week, but yes, Davy Grant is another underdog. I don't think he's as live for a finish as the Ashmouz or the Barezes are. So for that reason, I'm not necessarily as high on him as underdog, but definitely another one to add to the pile there. Marcos, not so much. I don't see him finishing Grant, so that leaves him with a decision equity. And although he could go out there and score 80 in doing so, I think you're going to need more than that to score optimal this week. I'm picking Grant. Should be a very fun, close fight. One of my most exciting matches of the card, but side with the more experienced guy here, Davy Grant, should be a fun one. On to the main card, 12-0-1, Lerone Murphy, 11-1-1, Josh Culibao, both guys with draws, funny enough, but a very tough matchup here. You got a guy in Leon Murphy who fought in a very controversial fight last time, one that could have gone either way, and now he's facing a guy in Josh Culibao who has been an underdog in almost all of his matchups, I think it is. No, he's a favorite against Durden Becky, but a guy who's been in there with the Jalen Turner, Charles Jourdains, Melson Bagdasarians, and who has fared pretty well. I mean, sure, you lose Jalen Turner, no shame in that. You draw against Jourdain, that's a great draw. And submitting Bagdasarian is something that no one's been able to do so far. So Josh Culibao has been kind of gaining everyone's respect. Now he's facing an undefeated guy in Lerone Murphy, who has been very explosive, very dynamic, multiple levels to his game, and who has shown the ability to mix it up and be very technically sound. And I think that he is the rightful favorite here. Obviously, a very, very close fight to call. Josh Culibao hasn't really landed any takedowns, hasn't really attempted any takedowns, and if we are talking about a 15-minute striking exchange, Lerone Murphy not only has the ability to mix it up there, but land takedowns of his own. And I think that not only having the home crowd behind him, but the home crowd judges as well, there are more paths of victories for him to get it done. Culibao doesn't really push the pace I want to see, so if this is going to be a really technical matchup, I favor Lerone Murphy. I think he has more powerful shots from the outside. I think he has the ability to mix it up on the ground if he decides to go there. And I think he does win this fight at a decently high clip. But that being said, 8.8 fade for me because I don't think he outscores Alvarez's, even anybody's win condition, really. I don't see him finishing Culibao. I don't see him going out there and landing 100 takedowns. So for that reason, I can't really get to him. Same thing with Culibao. I've talked about so many underdogs. That seems to be a really easy fight to fade for me. This should go all 15. This should be a close fight. Pass for me. I think there are much better fights to target on this. I kind of like this one. 12-4-1, Jai Herbert, 13-4, Fiehr Ziam. First glance, I was on Ziam. I mean, he showed the good ability to mix it up takedown-wise, landing 3 against Figlak there, showing good striking arsenal against Vendramini and Malarkey, and shown that he has the ability to not only mix it up, but be a very well-rounded prospect. And he is someone who has fought a variety of competition here. I mean, he has wins over Malarkey and Figlak, who are decent wins, and his one loss coming to McKinney, which round 1 McKinney is a mythical fighter, but coming against these decent prospects, I think that Ziam has a good ability to win fights. Herbert, on the other side of things, is someone who I haven't been the highest on. I think there are holes to Herbert's game. Holes that people were able to exploit. I mean, Trinaldo knocked him out even though Herbert was winning that fight. McCann submitted him on the ground. Wins against Kyle Nelson and Kama Ward, they aren't going to do too much for me. But Jai Herbert has shown the ability to go out there and fight this high level of competition. I mean, when you're losing, your only losses are to Trinaldo, Moicano, Topuria, and then a draw against Klein. You're going out there and you're fighting a good level of competition. I have to respect you for that. And I think the big difference we have here is whereas Ziam's going to be the more finesse technical striker looking to win the judge scorecards, Herbert's going to have more of that killer instinct. He's going to have the ability to go out there and land more power, more damaging shots, which could also go out there and sway the judges. He's a very technical striker, one that also has some decent takedown defense to stuff the potential shots Ziam may have. And this leads to be a very interesting matchups. If I think this can stay on the feet, then it comes down to the power of Herbert versus the swift technicality of Ziam, even though both these guys are very technically sound. And for that one, I think gun to my head, I have to pick Ziam, but a very, very close fight. Another one that I don't really want much DraftKings ownership of. 8.7 for Ziam. I guess if he wants to go out there and implement a grapple-heavy game plan, then sure, it could score well, but I don't necessarily think he's able to. So for that reason, fade on him as well. And he doesn't have much finish equity either. So, wow, a tough one for me to call, and I'm going to have to fade on this one as well. Close fight, coin flip fight. I'm leaning towards Ziam because he's a more passive victory, get it done. Would I be surprised if Herbert got there? No, not at all. An interesting one, and another one I'm looking to pass here, 2 in a row, but not this next one. This next one here, 16-6-1 Paul Craig, 23-5 Andre Muniz. 2 guys who are finishers or killer to be killed fighters, and it should be a very, very interesting matchup. Gonna be quick though. Both you guys are grapplers. Both of you guys like to win by submission. Who's going to prevail? Well, Paul Craig is the guy who's going to go out there and pull guard. If he's on the feet, has been knocked out really early on before. And Muniz has shown, although he is a primary grappler, has the ability to go out there and contend on the feet, throw some good strikes, be powerful at that. And I think for that reason, that's why Muniz is favorite here. He has the extra striking to his arsenal that Craig does not. But when it comes down to grappling, who's a better grappler? Well, although I think Craig is someone who's going to be very technically sound, Muniz is so physical. I mean, he's so strong down there, has a good ability to roll through that, and I think that it's a very close matchup, but I'm going to have to edge with the physicality of Muniz here, also with the ability to land more shots on the feet. So with there being more paths with the striking and the potential physicality of Muniz, I'm going to have to pick him here, but you guys all know I'm a big Paul Craig fan, so I wouldn't be surprised either way. This is a fight I want to target. It is favored to end under 1.5 rounds, and for that reason, it has the ability to score well on DraftKings. And with all the underdogs I've mentioned, not a problem to get Muniz at 9.3. If you want to get risky, go out there and get 6.9 Paul Craig. I'm leaning towards Andre Muniz with the chin of Paul Craig and the weight cut here and the division change. I think Muniz has the ability to get him out of there, and for that reason, is a very live favorite here to score very well. But it should be an entertaining matchup for as long as it lasts. I'm going to say short-lived fight, one that's all fireworks, and I'm picking Muniz to get it done. With that being said, though, kind of cheering for Paul Craig. And we're almost there. Nathaniel Wood, 19-5. Andre Fili, 22-9. Interesting matchup. Nathaniel Wood coming up a weight class. I picked Charles Jourdain, looked stupid doing so, and now you're getting a guy in Andre Fili who beat Charles Jourdain. Well, MMA math, a tough one to deal out here, but another matchup where Wood's going to look to go out there and implement his grappling. When he's going to look out there to use his takedowns. He's close enough on the feet, but the big red flag here is that height discrepancy. Feels a very tall, lanky dude who likes to use his strikes from the outside, and he was very good at doing so. Although he can be hit, he can be taken down, he showed a good ability to get back up and pressure his opponent, landing those damaging strikes. Beating the Bill Algios, destroying Pineda before Pineda crumbled a bit there, and beating the Charles Jourdains, right? Like, Andre Touchy Fili is a very, very talented fighter, but he can be hit, he can be taken down. He was nuked by Joanderson Brito. He was taken down and controlled by Bryce Mitchell. Andre Fili is far from perfect. But in this matchup here, he's going to have a huge size discrepancy. He's going to have the ability to keep Nathaniel Wood at the end of his punches, contend on the striking as well, look to stuff the takedowns. And I think this is a very, very close fight, one that should be lined a bit closer. That being said, I'm still going to side with Nathaniel Wood's side. Nathaniel Wood is a very dynamic, explosive grappler, one who's going to go out there and look to land takedowns at will. He landed 5 against Jourdain, only 1 against Rosa, but he did get 102 strikes landed there. He's very high volume, very active a lot of the time, and we've seen him his last 4 fights land 128, 102, 138, 136 strikes. Very, very fun fighter here. So to me, Nathaniel Wood is going to be more aggressive and have the ability to win the optics that way, and being the hometown fighter is someone I can see winning in the judges' scorecards. I think the discrepancy of the grappling is larger than the discrepancy of the striking. For that reason, Nathaniel Wood is going to be my pick. However, it is a very, very close fight. I can see it going either way. DraftKings-wise, though, because of the grappling upside, I lean Nathaniel Wood. Not much ownership on the Fili side because I don't think his win condition scores that well. It's probably keeping Wood away from him, stuffing the takedowns, keeping him at range, and at 7K, I've talked about enough underdogs, and I don't think Fili in a win is going to go out there and score that well. So, very interesting matchup. I'm going to side with Wood. However, I do think the line is wide. For all those getting on the Fili love, I don't blame you. And then the co-main event, 13-5, Molly Meatball McCann, 10-7-1, Julia Stoliarenko. Julia Stoliarenko, let's just say that. Armbar specialist, that's all she does. I mean, 1-5 in the UFC. Like, let's just put that there. 1-5 in the UFC. Only time she wins a fight is when she breaks a girl's arm with armbar. All her wins in the Rachel Ziam come by armbar as well. She went for it 1,000 times against Davis. I mean, she is limited to just that, facing the hype train Molly McCann. And this seems to be a let's get our girl back on track. Let's put you in the co-main event slot. Let's put you against a 1-5 fighter in the UFC, someone who has horrible striking defense, someone who has a one-trick pony, and see if you're still the girl we expect you to be. Let me put this out here, though. I don't think this fight is happening. Stoliarenko is a huge girl, fought at 140 last time, and I actually expect to come down and cut to 125. I mean, she barely made 135. How is she supposed to be able to come down here? I don't expect it to happen, but if it does, Stoliarenko is going to be the bigger fighter and is going to have an opportunity to win this fight whenever it's on the mat. The problem is, I don't think it gets there. Molly McCann is the way more explosive fighter, the way more technical striker, the way better striker, and someone who I think has finish equity early on in the fight, as long as this fight is standing. Clear striker versus grappler matchup. The problem is, the grappler is submission over position, one that if she doesn't get that, she's going to get pounded on top by Molly McCann, someone who is very strong and physical in her own right. So this is a fight I actually really want on DraftKings, funny enough. This is one I'm favoring to end us on the distance. It's one I think is going to be pretty entertaining, actually. And I think that it's either going to be Molly McCann by devastating strikes, melting Stoliarenko, who I don't think is that UFC caliber, or the one-trick pony hitting her one trick here and being that armbar. She is going to be the bigger fighter here. She is going to be at a huge advantage whenever this fight is on the mat. And if she wins this fight, it is going to score very well. I want both sides. Stoliarenko, a 6.8K. She's an armbar girl, right? And she won her one fight, scored 122. That's her path to victory. That's what she's going to have to do here. Whereas Molly McCann, she's no stranger to these finishes. 110 against Goldie, 109 against Cachoeira, 98 against Kim, 109 against Belbita. She scores very, very well in her wins. I do think this fight doesn't last long. I kind of think it's a setup or a test fight for McCann here, and I do think the winner scores very well. So give me violence. Give me a fight on both sides. I think Molly McCann should get it done from her home crowd. Should be actually a pretty fun fight. Then we get to the main event, 12-3 Tom Aspinall, 24-7 Marcin Tybura. Simple breakdown. Let's make this a quick one. Main event, Tom Aspinall will win this. I mean, very, very hefty favorite. I get why. Hyped up prospect facing a guy in Tybura who, although was on a winning streak, fighting tooth and nail with Blagoy Ivanov and Alexander Romanov, only beating Harris and Hardy because it comes down to him gussing out, losing to Sakai, Abdurakhimov, Volkov. Tybura has his flaws. And yeah, sure, he's a great wet blanket, great at taking you down and controlling you, but nowhere near the same technical grappler as Aspinall, nowhere near the same tactical striker as Aspinall, who is way more powerful, way more technical there. And I just don't think he's a better fighter than Tom Aspinall, simply put. The only red flag for Aspinall is that injury concern. He got injured in 15 seconds last time. I do think he's fully healthy and rehabbed and ready to go, and I do think he is warranted of being a 9.7K. This is where this whole video comes together. I've talked about nothing but underdogs the whole card, and I do think if you're going to spend up to anybody, it is Tom Aspinall. I do think he has round one finish upside. In his wins, he scored 116, 106, 94, 102, 129. A very, very solid fighter, very technically sound in all areas of MMA. But I do think he beats Marcin Tybura at a very high clip here, probably by finish. Way better grappler, way better striker. I do think he wins this fight. So, to me, hard for me to find too much left for the Marcin Tybura side. I do think Aspinall's the way to go here, and I do think he's warranted of this hefty favorite. So we've talked about underdogs. Go up and get Aspinall. He should do very well for you. That's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. We went over every single fight from my betting and draft perspective. Quickly, let me give you my quick picks. I'm taking Tom Aspinall in the main event, Molly McCann, Nathaniel Wood, Andre Muniz, Ziam, Lerone Murphy, Davey Grant, Johnny Parsons, Joel Alvarez, Jamal Pogues, Makhmud Muradov, Ketlin Vieira, Yanel Ashmouz, Shauna Bannon, and Danielle Barez. A lot of underdogs, a lot of very, very close fights that I'm not too confident in, but I gotta pick a side. I gun to my head for all these. Who would I pick? That's who. DraftKings-wise, we mentioned a ton of underdogs. Barez, Ashmouz, Grant, Bannon, Diakiese, Craig, Stoliarenko. All of them are very, very live. Now, of course, the Bannons, the Diakieses, the Craig and Stoliarenkos, those are your GPPs. Cash-wise, Barez, Grant, even Herbert and Diakiese could be your cash plays. I think even Parkin's live there. There are some very obvious fade targets, and the Culibao Murphy fight's a fade, fading the Herbert Ziam fight, fading Danny Roberts, and that's allowing me to go up there and pick the Jimmy Parsons and pick the GPP Pogues and Alvarez and really go up there and get my four fighters up top actually that are Muniz, McCann, Muradov, Aspinall. I really want Aspinall, I really want Muradov, McCann and Muniz are my GPP pivots. All four of those should score very, very well, and they are favored at this echelon of the price range for that reason. Reignmakers, highest ceilings on the slate, Aspinall, Muradov, they're there for sure. GPP, I think if you want to get different, Ashmouz and Bannon. I think when it comes down to me picking my leverage spot this week, I think it's going to be between Parkin, Diakiese, and Bannon. Just because, I mean, if all three of them wins, what's their win condition? Diakiese's, 10, 12 takedowns against a guy with 0% takedown defense, controlling him to a high-scoring victory. Parkin, it's a round one, round two finish, who scored very well. And Bannon is someone who's completely overlooked and whose path to victory is taking down Bruna Brasil, breaking her over the stretch, and implementing her will as someone who is very raw and not that good of a fighter, but whose path to victory is going to score very well. Some decent opportunities there. Whereas Ashmouz and McCann are also good ways around Reignmakers there. Betting-wise, I talked about a lot of underdogs. Definitely don't want to really go there in a bunch of them because I don't want a financial investment on the Bannons or the Stoliarenkos, but I'll be betting Ashmouz, I'll be betting Grant, be betting Barez. Those three I'm looking in towards. Probably betting the fight ends in KO for the Roberts versus Parsons fight. Probably the under in the Bannon Brasil fight, as well as the under for the Stoliarenko McCann fight. Again, as always, make sure to check me out on Twitter at GamblesGuru to see my final slate of plays or to ask me any questions regarding that. I'll always be happy to post that there. But that's going to do it for us here. Hopefully we covered everything. Make sure to leave any more questions you have in the comment section down below. Any questions, concerns, moral outrages, throw them in the comment section down below. But as always, I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel. Enjoy the fights this week. I hope all the information I gave this week was enough to help you guys win your DraftKings lineups, win your bets, and let's make some money, guys.